Hey, everybody. Welcome to Daniel Davis Deep Dive, coming to you live from Washington, D.C. And, man, we got one that's right on the hot plate today to talk to you. We have our ever-popular Matthew Ho back today with us. He's our fan favorite. Everybody loves it when Matt's on. Man, as a former State Department official, Matt, I think you're going to have some specific things to say about how this issue is going on with the Secretary of Defense and wow, just the disaster that's been going on with this whole way what should have been a standard hospital thing was handled. And man, to my view, basically the Secretary of Defense went AWOL and the administration fumbled bad in their explanation for what had happened, and leaving more questions than answers so far. And man, this is just hard to understand how something could go on like this at this level. And to bring people up to speed here, in case anybody may have missed some of the statements of late here, just real quick to recap: Secretary of Defense had a procedure, I think, on the 22nd of December. Was supposed to be a simple thing. He had some prostate cancer, but they caught it early, so all the prospects were good. But he got some kind of a problem with the results of that. It got an infection, I believe, had to go back on January 1st. Then didn't tell anyone, didn't tell the President of the United States, didn't tell his deputy. For a couple of days, basically, he was in the ICU and was incommunicado, didn't tell the President. Transferred authority to his deputy at Kathleen Hicks, didn't tell her, she didn't know. And it wasn't until a week later, after this firestorm brewed, when people started finding out, only then did the president himself find out what actually happened, why he was in the hospital for all of these procedures. So that's what happened. Most people are clear on those particular aspects of it here. But now let's take a look at what the administration did to try to cover over this and to try to explain it to the people. Now, first, we have John Kirby trying to explain, tell the people what happened. And his explanation here is actually pretty damning.
So the president has known for, I guess, 5 days now that Secretary Austin was in the hospital, but he wasn't informed why?
He was not informed until last Friday that Secretary Austin was in the hospital. He was not informed until this morning that the root cause of that hospitalization was prostate cancer.
So the question that he was asked was, and he didn't tell the president why. That's not what the answer that was provided. He just told what happened. He didn't say why did he not tell him. So we left that part off. Then some of the reporters in the room were a little annoyed about that, so they started asking some harder questions. And now then Kirby's getting a little snippy in his response.
Now, look, what your question kind of gets to is, and I've seen some of the sniping out there, how effective can the process be if the secretary can be gone and we don't know about it? I think what you need to understand, and what I hope people will understand, is that the national security decision-making process does not require, in fact, should not require, cabinet-level officials being the sole people in the room making decisions on any given day. You staff these things from the middle up, and then the cabinet officials, whether it's Secretary Blinken or Secretary Austin, come together as appropriate to make the key decisions, which happened. It happened on the 1st of January.
Okay, second time in a row, the question that was asked is not the question he answered. Nobody asked, how do you staff?
I just gotta say,
okay,
Kirby just continues to astound me. I mean, just he constantly does himself better every time in making my jaw drop. Right? I mean, it is just remarkable. Yeah, but I'll let you go on. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, because I mean, he's sitting here lecturing the girl on how the internal dynamics of the Defense Department work and who's staffing. Right. No one asked that. That wasn't the issue. The question is, why did he not tell the President of the United States that he was having cancer surgery? That's the question that was asked, and he didn't even answer it.
And his answer, Kirby's answer, completely patronizing, right? I mean,
right.
For those of you who don't understand how we do things, right? I mean, like, just what I'm not going to use bad words, but like people can guess what the next word would. You fill in the blank there, folks. But the other aspect too, though, is if I'm a member of Congress and I'm hearing this and I'm saying we confirmed Lloyd Austin as the Secretary of Defense, We didn't confirm some colonel or one-star general on the Joint Staff or on the National Security Council to be making these decisions, to be authorizing things. What are you talking about here, Admiral Kirby, how you don't need cabinet officials, those who are confirmed by the Senate as part of the constitutional process, that the way our government runs? What are you saying you don't need these people, that they're superfluous to how government actually works? It's remarkable how he basically just said, we don't need to follow the rules of the Constitution. We just let our middle management run things. I mean, that's one way you could take what he said.
Yeah, because that is what happened, however it wants to be taken. But man, okay, I'm going to give one more chance here. I don't know if we can pull a 2 for 2 here in one single segment, but it's possible that what you're about to see could make your jaw drop a little bit further. Now, the next
I believe he can do it, Danny. I've got confidence.
I'm going to go for it. We're going to see it, because let's don't underestimate Admiral Kirby. But he was asking the issue about trust. And okay, you've told us this, you deceived us from this other stuff. You didn't tell us this thing here. How can we trust you? Now, note, first of all, how he answers this, because even Kirby has a really hard time keeping a straight face.
But more broadly, why should we believe anything that this administration tells us about anything ever again?
I think we all recognize, and I think the Pentagon has been very, very honest with themselves about the challenge to credibility by what has transpired here, and by how hard it was for them to be fully transparent with the American people. I think we all recognize that. And wait, now just give me a second now. I know you got another one coming here, but we all recognize that this didn't unfold the way it should have on so many levels, not just the notification process up the chain of command, but the transparency issue. We all recognize that. And I think we all want to make sure we learn from that. It's up to you and your colleagues, and it's up to the American people to determine how much they're going to ascribe what happened here to our credibility on every single issue. But in every way, Secretary Austin has been an exceptional defense secretary, and he still has the full faith and confidence of the commander-in-chief.
That's the last part is what got me, man, because he can't even, he's stammering over himself. He never stammers over himself. He's always assured and confident and says, even if it's nonsense, what he said. And the fact that that tells you a lot there. But then after he finally got his bearings, and he's saying, now, of course, this was wrong on so many levels. And then he ends that saying by saying, but he still has the full confidence of the president and the great job of leadership he's doing. Those things don't fit. How do you get that together?
Right. And when you hear that, when I heard that coda there at the end, the praise of Secretary Austin, that sounds like to me like something that gets said before you fire somebody. It comes across that way.
Like a football coach. No, we have the complete confidence in him, and then he's fired the next morning.
Exactly. Then you bench your starting quarterback. It's just this notion of credibility. Is an excellent question, and I'm glad that was asked. I'm glad he was put on the spot, because there's so many other things that foreign policy wise, with regards to war, with regards to all aspects of American national security, have just not been spoken honestly by this administration, and we could or by previous administrations as well. But we're talking about this administration here, and right. And so whether it's just most recently that what's being said about what's happening in Gaza. They stand in front of us. The president just said it again just the other day, how he is we are working really hard. We're really pressing the Israelis. Tony Blinken said it as well, because he was just there. We're really pressing the Israelis on not to kill civilians, on to protect the civilian population, not to destroy a civilian infrastructure. As 2 or 3 C-17 loads of JDAMs, Hellfires, artillery shells land every day in Israel. Every second or third day, there's a cargo ship that pulls up to Israel and unloads a cargo ship's worth of munitions. And they stand in front of us and they tell us we're doing everything we can to make sure the Israelis follow the rule of law, avoid civilian casualties, et cetera.
As 200 or 300 bombs are falling per day on the strip on all of the very infrastructure you say you're trying to not hit. See how we keep hearing words, but we don't see any action follow from that. And I don't know which it is, Matt. Is it that our leadership is and our ability to lead is so compromised that even our friends don't listen to us? Or is it behind the scenes they're saying, hey, look, we'll just give you cover here and you can do whatever you want? I don't know which it is. All I do know is that it didn't have any effect on the ground.
Right. And it's in the trajectory where we're going here, the trend where we're going. I mean, this catastrophe that's unfolding in the Red Sea, this is going to be a long line of things that, Danny, when you and I are old men and we're looking back and we're saying, man, that certainly wasn't something to hang our hat on. This was a huge national humiliation, embarrassment. I have a feeling what's happening in the Red Sea may be one of those things, right? Where the American Navy is out there embarrassing itself, chasing around these Yemenis. Right, exactly. Boston whalers, basically, to try and stop them from ending the genocide in Gaza. This is what that's all about. And we're proclaiming we have a coalition, and the only people in the coalition are the Brits. There's a bunch of other nations that have signed up and said we're in the coalition, but they sent like a sailor to U.S. fleet headquarters in Bahrain. That was it. Other than like
flag.
Other than the Brits sending a 50-year-old destroyer or whatever they sent to the Red Sea, that's it. It's the American Navy protecting Israel's genocide, protecting Israel from the consequences of its genocide. I mean, so again, we hear all this, right? We hear from our elected officials, from our appointed officials, from people like Admiral Kirby, one thing, but then the actions are completely other. And people see through this. The American people are seeing through this. The American people understand this. And equally as important, the world sees through this. And we are basically isolating ourselves and trajectory we're on with these bad decisions. One, the consequences that come from pursuing these policies in terms of what might become a larger regional war, a World War III, however you want to describe it. But also then, too, how isolated we are. And how this then pushes nations to find alternatives. So you're telling me if you're a nation, if you're in the capitals around the world, everything we heard last year about the BRICS, bloc expanding and about de-dollarization and alternatives to the American hegemony, you're telling me that they're not putting like 3 more people on their desks who are dealing with that kind of stuff in these capitals around the world right now. We really need to get away from the Americans. We really need to find an alternative. They are dangerous. They are a rabid beast at this point.
Or we're just not trustworthy. They can't count on us.
They can't count on us. You can't count on them. You can't believe
us. And that keeps getting back again to this whole issue with Secretary Austin. Because to me, there's a lot more at stake here than just how he handled this one issue administratively. He told somebody he shouldn't have told somebody, whatever it was. Those are all big issues. That by itself is a big red flag, but it's only the latest in a lot of red flags about Secretary Austin specifically. You can start with how he handled the Afghan withdrawal. From the time he came in, why didn't he? That wasn't the first thing on his plate, since it was already an agreement in place that was supposed to be executed by May 31st of 2021, and why there was basically no action taken on it. And then not until the very end did they start doing some emergency things. And now then they're in reaction mode. And then we know how the last part happened in there, or how he keeps saying that our objective is to hurt Russia when we get into that war, and how he's not handled that stuff very well at all. He's setting us up to go on a military tactic and strategy that's militarily unattainable and can't end well for us. And it's like he doesn't know that. So everywhere you want to look at it, there's bad judgment. And this is just the latest one. And I think we probably need a new Secretary of Defense. I don't think that we have the confidence in him, and I don't think that our allies or adversaries have confidence in him.
I'm reminded, if folks remember, going back about 15 years ago, a little more, 20 years ago maybe, when Dick Cheney was out hunting and he shot that guy in the face. And the White House didn't say anything about it. and the press found out, the national press found out through the local press because someone at the hospital said, yeah, this guy got shot by the vice president, And when they asked, I forget who the spokesperson was at the time, Ari Fleischer maybe, or someone like that. When they asked, the national press asked, why didn't you tell us that the vice president shot someone in the face? They said, deadpanned, we didn't think it was newsworthy. We didn't think it was important. Right. I mean, so if they're going to lie about things like that, if they're going to say such obvious, like farcical things, then what are they not telling us about really important stuff? So if you've got this culture basically in the White House, that's the top level of government, where the Secretary of Defense feels he does not need to let not only just the above him, but below him know that he is in the ICU. And more importantly, I think, Danny, too, this is where the culture comes into. The people around the secretary didn't say anything. So his aides, his top staff, they must have known he was in the people in the hospital knew, but they would have been out of the loop in terms of who being informed. But so you've got a 1-star or 2-star who's always walking around with Lloyd Austin. This man or this woman didn't think it was important that his boss was not telling the president or the chairman of the Joint Chiefs or letting Kathleen Hicks know. I mean, there's so many things we can go down here. First of all, who's Kathleen Hicks? 99% of Americans have no idea who Kathleen Hicks is. I bet if we went to Congress and walked through the halls and stopped members of Congress, most of them would not know Kathleen Hicks' names. Oh, yeah, okay, now I remember.
She's on Fox, right?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, right? I mean, so the responsibility that is entailed here in these positions is apocalyptic, and that's not being glib, right? Because we are talking about incredibly, so if the culture is such that this is pervasive, that this is permissive, this is how it goes. And then you see the defensiveness of the White House. What else is out there that's not being spoken about? But one thing I want to bring up about Lloyd Austin, because I want people to recall this, is that if you remember when he was head of CENTCOM, about 50 of his intelligence analysts, and this is when the U.S. is prosecuting the war against the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq, as well as basically prosecuting regime change in Syria. We're standing up AFRICOM, all kinds of things. But I'm not standing up, but really filling out AFRICOM. This is during the Obama second term of the Obama administration. And about 50 intelligence analysts down at MacDill Air Base, which is where CENTCOM, Central Command, is located. And Lloyd Austin, again, was the head of Central Command. For those who don't know, Central Command is the U.S. warfighting organization responsible for the Middle East, basically. And, 50 of these analysts went to the Inspector General and said, the CENTCOM commander, Lloyd Austin, is cooking the books here. The information he is giving to the president, he is cherry picking. He is lining stuff out. He is massaging our analysis to provide a politically appropriate or an institutionally appropriate set of briefings to the president of the United States. And so this is the man who then went on to Raytheon, of course, as well as to venture capital firm like Pine Capital that invests in, right? I mean, so all kinds of conflict of interest. And so now we're really shocked that he's that he's not willing. Yeah, right. I mean, that was a big deal. And of course, it was, there was an investigation and nothing happened. And, when it came time for his when it came time for Lloyd Austin's confirmation, there were those, Ray McGovern was one of the ones who led the effort to say, look, you can't trust this guy. If you believe that investigation cleared him, you've never been in the government. You've never been part of the military. You don't know how these things actually work. This guy is going to lie. He's already shown it. He's going to do what's best for him. And he's got all these conflicts of interest. And so now here we are talking about how he didn't let the president know that he was in the ICU for about 4 or 5 days. It didn't let his deputy know. So basically the top person at the Department of Defense with its 5,000 nuclear weapons, 1,500 on alert status, everything else, troops in contact around the globe. It's okay. The top guy, he's just gonna not let anyone know where he is. And I think it's why you and I are so upset about this, and it's giving the JIDA to so many veterans and people in the military, is because on day one you get hammered, particularly as an officer, that you are responsible for the people above you and below you. They knowing what's going on. That is, I heard it once, I heard it 10,000 times. Bad news is not like wine. It does not get better with time. right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually, we actually mentioned that yesterday on those exact same things there.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
got to tell the boss, you got to tell the people underneath you, and bad news doesn't get better with time. And
Right. Right.
and for Kirby to sit there and say, well, we're looking through our process and see if there's things we can do better, implies that they didn't know that elementary truth that most fourth graders probably have a grasp of. So that's why I'm wondering if there's something else we don't know. But what I'm going to be real interested in seeing, Matt, is what happens next. Because in my view, the most honorable thing would be for Secretary Austin to resign right now for many things, but this might being the cherry on the top. And there is some precedent for this relating to him because in this exchange I'm about to show you from 2023, I believe it was March of 2023, there was a lot of issue. They were looking at what happened 2 years hence from the Afghan withdrawal, and he was asked a very pointed question in this process of this exchange here. What would normally happen if a ship captain ran a ship aground? Watch this.
Secretary Austin, last week, General McKenzie repeated that he has many regrets about the botched, deadly, and embarrassing withdrawal from Afghanistan, and that he supports investigations into that withdrawal. A moment ago, you said you executed the president's order. You didn't tell us what you advised the president to do, but do you have regrets about the withdrawal from Afghanistan?
I support the president's decision.
Do you have regrets about the withdrawal or how the withdrawal occurred from Afghanistan that cost the lives of 13 of our service members?
I don't have any regrets.
You don't have any regrets. Secretary Austin, it's very telling. Secretary Austin, has there ever been any accountability for anyone within the Department of Defense for the deadly, botched, and embarrassing withdrawal from Afghanistan? Any accountability?
Hey, listen, our troops evacuated 124,000 people off of that airfield.
Has anyone been held accountable? If a Navy captain grounded a ship, what happens immediately?
Typically, that captain is removed.
That captain is removed. Has anyone been held accountable for what happened in Afghanistan?
To my knowledge, no.
Okay. If a ship captain is removed because a ship runs aground, which is an embarrassment, but it's not, it's not operationally a problem. But if the ship that is run aground is this whole shipwreck that we see playing out before us here, I think that the captain of that ship should probably be removed as well. And I think, Matt, no matter how you want to slice and dice this was an avoidable mistake. It's an embarrassment to the country. It's embarrassment to President Biden. It's an embarrassment to, and it reflects poorly on the United States to our friends and adversaries alike. I just don't think that he should be able to continue to serve in here because I don't think you recover from this one.
No, I don't. I think it's a stain. I think there's certainly the precedent. Again, you would expect that people subordinate to Austin would be held to a standard, but we failed it. We're failing in many regards to that too. So I was in the Marine Corps, of course, and I was in the Secretary of Navy's office 20 years ago now. So and around a lot of senior naval officers, admirals, captains, commanders, and they talked about the Cole precedent, as they were kind of phrasing it, in the sense that when the USS Cole got hit and 19 American sailors were killed, and the captain was not held accountable. He was giving awards, in the sense that you could make at best a claim that, okay, we didn't see it coming, the intelligence wasn't there, but still the ship got hit in a catastrophic attack in the middle of day in a port of call that had all kinds of red flags around it. This guy should have been held accountable, and he wasn't. He was given awards. And I remember them talking about that in that sense, because at that time something had happened and someone was relieved right away. Some skipper was relieved right away. And I think that's the case. You have this politicization where people are just not being held accountable. People aren't being held accountable for any of the losses of the American military, the loss in Iraq, which, however you want to peel it, look, the goal of that war was to make Iraq a hedge against Iran. That was, among other things, that was a strategic goal. What happened? That's a loss.
Strategic ally of Iran.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a loss. Afghanistan, the catastrophe of Libya, what we saw happen in Syria.
Yes.
All kinds of things.
Yemen, add that to the list.
Exactly. Even say that the Ukraine war, who are the people who said, Mr. President, we are guaranteed if we get these weapons in that they will stop the Russians, it will turn them back, that this counteroffensive will be successful, as well as, too, those on the civilian side who are saying, Mr. President, it's 6 months, a year, the Russian economy is going to be collapsed, and Vladimir Putin's going to be out on his butt. You know, I mean, like that guy, who's been held accountable for any of those? Any of them.
All
right?
of those are just dramatic failures.
Right. And you have the precedent I think you look at right now is that that occurs in 2010 when General Stanley McChrystal, who's in charge of American or all international forces in Afghanistan, the ISAF commander, has those comments. It wasn't even he didn't even make the comments. It was people on his staff who made comments about the president of the United States, which was, you just cannot do that. You should not do that. You cannot do that. And if you're a commander and people are making comments like that, you need to hold them accountable for that. He set a tone among his staff that allowed for that type of commentary, derision, insubordination, et cetera. And he was relieved right away. He offered his resignation. He went right to the White House. He accepted it. He took it on the chin. I'm not a big fan of Stanley McChrystal, as a lot of people are probably aware. However, in this case, he did exactly what he was required to do as being an American military officer, as being a professional warrior. He did exactly what he was supposed to do. He accepted responsibility and he resigned.
And let me tell you, Matt, if that doesn't happen here, if despite all of these things happen, all of the issues you just raised underneath all of this stuff, if at the end of the day, President Biden maintains that statement that Kirby said, he has my full confidence. He's got great leadership, and he's going to continue on. If nothing happens here, I think the credibility of the entire administration just gets cut down to the knees even further. And I don't know what kind of implications that could have, but they're not good.
Yeah, I think everything the White House is doing right now, of course, is geared up. It centers around November 2024. That's all their calculations. And so this comes into that of like, this will make us look weak. This will be feed for the National Press Corps, particularly those from Fox and the conservative outlets. But then also as well, this is feed for Donald Trump. This is feed for whoever else, and it makes us look as if we are not as strong on defense as the Republicans would be. That's all
what they may think, but I think the opposite is what is going to happen. Is that it'll be worse for his November 2024 outcome, because they are going to say what you and I are saying. We're not the only ones, I assure you.
Oh, absolutely. And if you and I were part of any organization, Danny, we would expect, one, if it was us, to be relieved, but we would expect that a colleague or whatnot, a coworker, would be relieved in a position like that. And if it wasn't, that would cause us trouble. And that would cause us, okay, I've got some real issues with how this thing's being run. And maybe it's just, and at this point, however long you've been with the organization, it's issue number 35, stacking on top. And eventually, right, you get to the whole straw and camel analogy,
camel
right?
thing, yeah.
But it shows I don't know what the right word is, but I guess lack of seriousness or professionalism or competency, this is the Department of Defense you're talking about. And it's just not acceptable for the Secretary of Defense to not keep the President of the United States informed. And you can make all kinds of arguments. Well, he's technically not in a chain of command because it goes from the president to the combatant commanders. You can make all those arguments, but we all know that's not how it actually functions, not how it runs. And regardless of all that, it's the perception that matters, right? Let's put on our, people want to say, perception, no, this is the way that we're in the real world. Perception is what matters. And, this is what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with the perception of a United States that's out of control, that is going to do what is best in its political short-term interests. It's going to push unwinnable wars in Ukraine. It's going to support genocide. It's going to sell weapons to all kind of monarchies and despots and everything else, while beating its chest about how morally righteous it is, lecture everybody. And it's, and so it's just one more thing where nations around the world say, man, we got to get away from the Americans.
So now let me ask you the next harder question here in the last few minutes that we have. So let's say that either Austin finally says, all right, I'm going to do the right thing, or the White House says, all right, dude, we're getting too much heat because of you, and we got to look at November, so you got to go. So we'll let you willingly step aside or whatever. So he's gone. is there anybody in the offing that could actually step in to do that job that would be forthright, that would have integrity, that would have good judgment, that the White House would pick? I mean, is there anybody that you can even imagine that would be politically acceptable and get past it and could do those things? Or would we just get the next guy in line to be just like him?
I think you get the next guy in line to be just like him. You may not get another retired 4-star, but I think they like the idea for appearance purposes of having someone who had been in uniform. But I think it's also, I think the defense industry feels it's their term to have one of their own, to have someone who really is one of their own. Lloyd Austin, of course, was a part of it, being a board member of Raytheon as well as other things. But I think the defense industry wants someone of their own in that spot. And so I would imagine that. But certainly there are those out there that you could see, off the top of my head. You could find somebody, particularly if you're going to promise them it was like an interim period, right? It'd only be for a year, only for 2 years. So you could have, a former senator or somebody come in to fill the spot, get them through the election. I mean, there's certainly, there's whether or not you and I would like who they select, there's certainly those who would be amenable both to the Congress, the Senate in particular, as well as the defense industry in terms of who they could replace him with.
Yeah. Well, I hope we find out because even if there did get another guy in line like him, at least it would stop the bleeding right now. But I think if he stays in, the bleeding continues and we continue to suffer on that. And by the way, the one guy I think that I would, put up there the most is Matthew Ho. I would definitely put him up there in case President Biden's watching. I would put him up there. Anyway, we're talking about the qualification. Somebody who would do a great job. That would certainly be you. But
I mean, even like just in the sense that they could put the worst person, someone who we would say is okay. Austin was much better. They could put whoever in there, and they could put Jack Keane or David Petraeus in there or something like that, right?
Man. Okay, it could get worse.
Yeah, and so, but but at least it would show, to your point, Danny, the decisiveness, right? The willingness to have some accountability,
and
right? To do the right thing.
That would help. Yeah, I'd like to see that. We'll see how it unshakes, and we'll definitely have you back on to talk about that and many other things that are continuing on. Look forward to having you back on the next show, and thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Danny.
All right, and that's all we have for you today on the Deep Dive. We continue to give you information like this. We are unintimidated and uncompromised, no matter what the information is, to make sure you get the truth, to make sense out of your world. Because at the end of the day, folks, we're all in this together, and we're looking for ways to hold our leaders' feet to the fire. So we're going to keep talking about issues like this until the right thing gets done and people are held accountable. Thanks for joining us today. Like and subscribe, share with your friends so that they get access to this same great stuff. And we will look forward to seeing you next time on Daniel Davis Deep Dive.